Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KP. We are back once again to do a Monday Night Raw recap, which took place last night, September 29th, in Raleigh, North Carolina. We kick off the show with a recap of what closed out the show last week, and of course, that is the attack from Asuka and Kairi on Rhea and Io. Rhea comes out to the ring and demands the Kabuki Warriors come out and meet them in the ring. Io comes out and is still very much conflicted as she claims Asuka and Kairi are her family and she still loves them. Asuka then comes on the jumbotron and tries to remind Io that she's here because of her, and if she apologizes like she should, everything can go back to normal and they can be a family again. Io tells Ripley that she needs more time, and as Io walks away, Rhea is then ambushed by Kairi and Asuka once more. And Io, then very conflicted on the ramp, comes back in to help, but the end result is the same: Rhea and Io on their backs as Asuka and Kairi stand tall. So clearly, still a bunch to be resolved here. And this time, the only difference is Io got the mist instead of Rhea, but Rhea did eat an elbow drop from Kairi for her troubles. Later on in the evening, we see Kairi ask Io once again to apologize to Asuka so they can once again become a family. And yet another segment took place throughout the night. We see Io ask or tell Rhea that they'll be teaming up to take out Kairi and Asuka at Crown Jewel. So Crown Jewel shaping up to be quite the card. A little more on that here in a bit, but yeah, pretty great segment to start off the show. Then we get into the first match of the night, which has Dominic Mysterio defending that Intercontinental Championship against Rusev. As you might expect, Rusev's strength takes control of most of this match. The ending comes when Dom tries to grab his belts and go home. And then Rusev cuts him off, and Dom tries to hit him over the back, but Rusev remains unfazed. So Dom then tries to pull the Eddie Guerrero, flop on the ground, throw the title in Rusev's hands. That doesn't work either, as the ref clearly saw them, and I was kind of worried there for a split second. I didn't know if he was going to play it off like he couldn't, but glad to use some logic there. And Dom then backs the corner into the ref. Backs the ref into the corner, Rusev to his back, and then Dom hits him in his man purse, as the announcers say. This allows Dom to hit the roll up for the win to retain, and still your Intercontinental Champion is Dominic Mysterio. Rusev clearly very upset, and I can't imagine that is the last we'll see of that rivalry. Getting into the next match, we see Raquel Rodriguez going up against Bayley. Speaking of Bayley, before the match, we see Bayley kind of pleading with Lyra as she's unable to do this without her help. Lyra very confidently states that she can't continue to give Bayley second chances and walks away. This is a pretty good match, but similar to the Rusev Dom match, the bigger person Raquel controls most of the match. Bayley makes efforts to overcome the bigger opponent, and when she finally does that successfully, appears to have the match kind of in her hands. Roxanne then distracts the ref and rakes Bayley's eyes. This allows Raquel to hit that big boot and land the Tejado bomb to get the win. After the match, Roxy and Raquel attack Bayley, and then we see Lyra, very conflictingly so, come down to help Bayley, and Bayley and Lyra stand tall here. Bayley's way of thinking Lyra confuses her more than ever. So thanking Lyra here is an interesting bit as well. But per the past few weeks, I haven't a clue where we're going. But I love Bayley's character here, and Lyra playing off of it is a ton of fun as well. Next match has LA Knight going up against Kofi Kingston. We see a segment back and forth earlier in the night. Kofi says that he's a former world champion, and LA Knight tells him, well, that was a long time ago. That won't be happening again, but I will be the champion. And basically says, let's go hash it out in the ring, if you will, as we often see so often. But yeah, the ending here comes with Woods attempting to assist, eats a clothesline from LA Knight. Shortly after, LA Knight then hits a BFT to get the win here. An asterisk definitely should be placed next to LA Knight's name here, as Big G wasn't able to assist the New Day Thanks to Penta taking him out last week. But yeah, KP, pretty action-packed first half of Raw. Continuing story between Asuka, Io, and Kyrie, and of course Rhea. Rusev's lack of winning ways against Dominic Mysterio. Bailey continuing her interesting character angle, and LA Knight and Kofi Kingston. What'd you make of it all this first half of Raw?
Yeah, definitely a few interesting things to discuss in the opening half of Raw. That first segment with the likes of Rhea, Io, and the Kabuki Warriors. It's nice to see an opening segment that isn't involving the Vision for once. That we do normally get that at the very start of the show. So this was a nice little change. Obviously, these ladies main evented last week, so I guess you could say it's sort of like following up from that. And yeah, maybe they're now sharing the limelight along with the Vision in like one of the bigger stories on Raw. But it was a good start because I think this progressed in a nice way. It allowed Io to sort of like see, Asuka and Kyrie for their true colors, obviously with them attacking her. And yeah, it definitely seems that it's progressing in the right way. Moving along to Crown Jewel, that tag team match that's been announced. Yeah, I think this is a good way of doing things. We'll get Io and Rhea teaming together, which seemingly has been sort of like teased, sort of like dancing around the idea for a little while now. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how the match does take place. But yeah, definitely a nice progression, and it's an interesting dynamic, between the four ladies. I think it was going to lead up until this point, and yeah, they've gone with the logical route, which makes sense, which is always a good thing, And yeah, I like the opening segment. I thought it was pretty good. The first match of the night, I thought it was good. I think it did everyone, a big favor in this one here, particularly because Rusev looked very dominant, very strong, as you've already mentioned. He controlled most of the offense, and there were little bits of hope and sparks from Dominic Mysterio, but then Dom outsmarting Rusev with everything at the end. The four different attempts to win the match in various different ways. I thought was it was pretty clever and pretty well done from Dom. Just like the levels of desperation that he has to go to, in order to beat someone, the size, the power, the strength of Rusev. But yeah, it just shows what was needed to be done to actually beat him. So I think it's yeah, it did both men world of wonders this one, and I enjoyed the match. I thought it was fun to watch, and yeah, just the way that Dom was able to manipulate his way out of the situation with the title still. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the segment. I thought it good. I thought it was good. And it did everything right here, basically. Going on to Raquel and Bailey, yeah, I mean, the match itself was fine. It wasn't anything too great or anything, but in terms of what it does going forward, it's very similar situation to what we had, I guess, at the end of last week's match. So you've still got Bailey in a position where what is she really doing? Obviously, we're still trying to figure that out, and it's definitely hooking our interest. So we're very, very keen. But yeah, it's that whole sort of split personality thing. Obviously being frustrated on the loss, Roxanne Perez getting involved, and a match being set up next week. I think it's going to be Lara Valkyria against Roxanne Perez. So yeah, looking forward to seeing how this sort of all emanates into that matchup, and what happens then, progression wise. Yeah, I think that it's definitely hooking me, which is what's important here. But I'm just so fascinated by where this is really going to end up being with Bailey, because at the moment I really can't place it. So the split personality thing is interesting. We've mentioned this before, but I mean, we've got to say that Raquel Rodriguez is looking great, right? She has been for the last number of weeks. She's always been sort of like second fiddle wherever she's been, like whether it's been with Liv Morgan or whatever. She's sort of been like the second person in the conversation. But I feel like now she's up there. And she's really making a name for herself more than anything here. And it's great to see that sort of blossoming from her. So yeah, I think that we can take that from this as well. So definitely some interesting things to take forward from that match. And yeah, Raquel getting the win, just speaks to what she's doing at the moment. Obviously with the help of Roxanne Perez, they seem to be gelling really well. It's not a bad thing they got going on, to be fair. With LA Knight and the New Day, I think this is probably the weaker segment of the first half. No real offense, to this particular segment at all, but I think just generally speaking, this had the least weight to it. Obviously, with LA Knight pushing to go to the world title, and obviously he wants a piece of Seth Rollins, being the last to pin him. The world title conversation talk with Kofi Kingston coming into play here. Yeah, it made sense to put the match. Made sense to do it, and I'm glad Knight won, because I think ultimately it had to be done here. Him taking the loss of Kofi wouldn't have really done anything for him. Would have knocked him back a few places. So yeah, I think this is the right call, and it made a lot of sense. The match was decent enough as well. it wasn't it wasn't anything crazy, but I liked it for what it was. It did what it needed to do, and yeah, it helps LA Knight sort of like keep on moving upwards, which is what he needs to be doing. He needs to be targeting Seth, and I feel like we're probably not done with that just yet. So I think there's a bit of a queue at the moment for to go to get to Seth, but I think he's definitely somewhere somewhere close to the front of the line for sure. So yeah, not a bad win for Knight. Enjoyed it, and yeah, just a pretty decent start to Monday Night Raw, to be fair.
Yeah, I have to basically kind of pinch myself sometimes because a lot of the talent on Raw that's being pushed right now is talent that's kind of overdue and a lot of my favorites. So I have to try to make sure I try to remain unbiased. But yeah, I think I can definitely agree. LA Knight's kind of match here definitely feels like filler, whereas the rest of these matches and segments very much have a continued storyline here. And always love to hear the praise for Raquel. Obviously, she's made huge strides, and we hit on that. I try not to hit on that too often as well. But then the likes of Asuka and Bailey being featured on weekly television. It had been so long since they've been featured that it's just great to see them on screen. So with that, we'll continue into the second half of Raw, which does kick off with the Seth Rollins promo. He basically says the winner of Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins at Crown Jewel will not only be for that Crown Jewel championship, but could very well be the future of WWE for the next 10 to 20 years. Um, Cody then comes in and basically says that you're kind of being dramatic, essentially. Says that we have no control over that, that it's up to them, the WWE Universe. And then kind of hits on their friendship past-ish kind of history. Definitely murky waters at best. But Seth tells Cody that they were never friends and that the WrestleMania 40 instance was just purely a lesser of two evils, and that at Crown Jewel they'll be writing a new history. So yeah, nothing groundbreaking here, but for me, it's just these two guys. Every time they get together, is going to be a banger, if you will. And I think 10 years from now, we'll look back at all these segments. And this was a pretty fun segment. Both guys kind of bringing the energy here. Cody, I feel like, has been bringing the energy ever since he's been back too. So I just kind of relish in seeing these two, and it gets me excited to see what they will come up with next. The Crown Jewel should be no exception. We should be in for a treat on that one as well. Getting into the next match, we have AJ Styles and Dragon Lee going up against Los Americanos, who do get a name this week, which is Bravo and Rayo. And I made it clear before, I think the more Los Americanos we get, the better. But they walked into a buzzsaw this week, and that of AJ Lee, wishful thinking perhaps, AJ Styles and Dragon Lee, who before the match stated that they were going to go after the tag titles. So perhaps building a tag division on Raw. I think AJ Styles is a bit above that. But if he can help kind of get Dragon Lee over, I think that's a great call. And a really fun match here. It shouldn't be a surprise considering all of these. I was a bit surprised that El Grande Americano didn't come into play, but another note here, AJ Styles did announce that essentially thanks to us, the WWE Universe, take that with a grain of salt if you believe that sort of thing or not. But AJ Styles will be going up against John Cena at Crown Jewel. So once again, that Crown Jewel card is shaping up to be a very good card indeed. We then get into the main event, which, shocker, shocker, it does include the Vision, this time the Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker, going up against Jimmy and Jay, the Usos. That clothesline from Breaker to Jimmy on the announce table was a fun spot. I think they might be overdoing that spot here lately, but regardless, this was fun for what it was. We returned from commercial break to see Jay trying to take on both Braun and Bronson, a jagged edge and a spear, then take out both of the Usos, and the act of humiliation wasn't quite done there as Breaker attempts to stack them to get ready for a tsunami from Bronson. But then enters the OTC Roman Reigns with a steel chair in hand. Crowd pop for that one was huge. 4 weeks removed from that beatdown he took at Clash in Paris, Roman quickly takes care of Braun and Bronson, and the Usos land a super kick and double splash to win that match there. Then after the match, Roman gives Breaker a couple of chair shots for his troubles. Roman is then hyping up Jay after the match, and we see kind of Jimmy in the background, who looks conflicted at best with what he's seeing, kind of in front of him, as painted there in the bottom right hand picture. Um, But yeah, the drama never ceases to go away with the bloodline. KP, what'd you make of the second half? Cody, Seth promo there. The AJ Styles Dragon Lee going up against Los Americanos, and of course that main event and the return of the OTC.
Yeah, we started off the second half with Seth and Cody, and I think, they are doing their best to sort of like build up the importance and, what this match really means in the grand scheme of things here, whether it's the future of the industry, as Seth called it, whether it's a little too much, as Cody replied to Seth when he eventually came out. They seem to be setting the scene for what should be a pretty good match. You would argue it should be, considering the talent that's going to be in that ring together. Yeah, I don't know. There seems to be a lot on the line here, even though it's, it is just for the Crown Jewel Championship, which after Crown Jewel doesn't really mean a lot. It maybe gets referenced for about, 2 or 3 weeks, and then we just sort of forget about it after the next PLE. But I do think that there is a lot on this one because, as Seth sort of said, it is two champions, on the top of their game, at the top of the industry, and they are literally competing to see who is the best of the best. And it hasn't been, favorable in the history for Seth Rollins during when these two have been in the ring together. Obviously, Cody hasn't won all 3 of those matches, but I think Seth has an opportunity here to, really make a really big statement. And I think it's very important that he does win the match. Obviously, we can talk about this in a lot more detail going into Crown Jewel, but I think he sort of like is highlighting how important it is for him. There was a segment literally just before Braun and Bronson made their entrance later on in the night, where they're all in Gorilla, and Heyman is there as well. And Seth just literally wanders in, from the, I think it's from the right hand side as we're watching, and he literally just says, like, I have to beat him. And he says again, I have to beat him. Like, he corrects Heyman. He says, I have to beat him. And it does seem really important. So yeah, after this, it's a very good chance that, they go their separate ways back to their own brands, and, they deal with whatever's coming next for them both. But I think there will be that sort of like weight on their shoulders going into it with, we do have to get a win in this one, because at the end of the day, we want to shape the future, and we want to sort of like, have it go through us. And both of them claim that in their own ways. Cody says he's the quarterback, that he is the one that wants to be the face of the company. Whether Seth says, he is part of the vision, and, whatever he says goes. He gives the orders, and whatever goes through Seth is what happens. So yeah, there's a lot that goes on to it. So I think you can sort of look into a bit more detail, and obviously we can discuss that a lot more going into Crown Jewel. But for now, they're doing a decent job of building it up, and I think that's to be respected. Into the next match, AJ and Dragon Lee against Los Americanos. Don't really have an awful lot to say about this one, because it was pretty quick. They seemed to sort of like rush through this matchup. Not really in terms of like how the match sort of like flowed. It didn't seem rushed at all, but it was a pretty quick paced one, and it didn't last too long. Like you said, El Grande Americano not really getting involved too much. He was pretty quickly nullified by AJ Styles. AJ and Dragon Lee working together really, really well in this one. And just cancelling out Los Americanos, getting the victory over them both. I think they worked really well together. If they ever want to run this team back, I think, they could probably do that quite easily, because they seem to gel really nicely. And I thought it was a good match for what it was. It was pretty quick, but it was fun to watch. So yeah, did the job that needed to be done. Dragon Lee, the number one contender for the AAA Mega Championship. He'll face Dominic Mysterio soon. And AJ Styles obviously going off to face John Cena at Crown Jewel. This does seem like a little bit of sort of like maybe like a filler thing, like we said at LA Knight. But obviously there has been history between these guys, so it might not be quite the same in that respect. But it didn't really have the importance, considering where these two are both going separately in their own sort of next challenges. This does seem, very far away from where they are headed. So that's what I will say, but it was a fun match. And then, that main event. I mean, I didn't expect Roman Reigns to come back. I'll be honest. I knew he was going to come back at some point, but I just thought, based on the current situation, I didn't see him coming back right here in this show. So when he did come back, I was quite surprised by that, and that's always a good thing. I like surprises. But yeah, I think the match went pretty much standardly. It looked to be in control for the Vision towards the end there, and obviously they had the Usos stacked. Looks like it was going to be quite punishing. And when Roman came down, the absolute equalizer, he turned the scales completely opposite ways, and allowed Jimmy and Jay to pick up the win after he basically just cleared Braun and Bronson from the situation, threw Braun Breaker back into the ring. Usos were able to pick up the scraps, and yeah, super kick, spear, double Uso splash secures the victory. Roman Reigns having a very interesting conversation with Jey Uso afterwards, just as the cameras were rolling off of the show. Something along the lines of basically just, forget about everybody else and, just focus on yourself and things like that. So it's quite interesting to see that. It almost does look like, you've got that very controlling tribal chief from years ago in Roman Reigns, maybe coming out now in Jey Uso. That seems to be the vibe that's being picked up here. Where that's going to be the case, obviously you got Jimmy Uso watching on from the from from a little distance away, not entirely sure what to make of the situation and the interaction. But yeah, it's picking up. I think there's another twist coming at some point soon. As to what it's going to be, I'm not entirely certain, but if it really does result in a heel turn for Jey Uso, which it looks like it seemingly could be going that way, then I guess we'll see what happens, and maybe it could be something really, really good for him. So yeah, regardless though, decent main event. I was quite surprised by Roman coming back, and that's not a bad thing at all. I like that. In terms of Raw, I thought this was a pretty decent episode. A lot of things moving in the right direction. It's very clear which show at the moment is the better show. Although SmackDown did have a pretty decent show on Friday, much better than what it was normally. Hopefully they can remain consistent in that sense. That's my 2 cents on SmackDown there quickly. But yeah, I thought Raw was pretty good. I really liked it. I gave it an 8 out of 10. They did a lot of things really, really well, and yeah, it's building up Crown Jewel to be a bit more interesting than what I think it was going to be. So I think after WrestlePalooza, there was a lot that needs to be done, and they do seem to be sort of, putting in a really good card. It's about more than that. We know it is. So this is a good step so far. But I think for what it was a good episode of Raw. What did you make of it all, Nick?
Yeah, I completely agree. Thought it was a great episode, actually. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Just tons of progressed storylines here. And yeah, making Crown Jewel out to be, Crown Jewel at one point was a pretty insignificant PLE in the grand scheme of things. It was very much thrown together to put the biggest people up against each other. But that Crown Jewel Championship, I have a pretty couple good matches already set up for it for those, and then a couple of other ones outside of that. So yeah, looking to be like maybe we're trying to rebound from WrestlePalooza a bit. So building up a really nice card for it, which no complaints from either of us on that end, I'm sure. But yeah, overall, tons of progress storylines here. The return of the OTC, and yeah, Jay and Jimmy. Maybe they'll get a redo eventually for that feud they had not that long ago. Certainly couldn't do worse. I think that's all fair to say. But yeah, really good episode of Raw for me. And with that, this has been our Raw recap. And this has been The Push with Nick and KP. If you like what we're putting out here or have any comments to add, please feel free to do so in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, as that helps us out tremendously. But until next time, we'll be back shortly with that NXT recap as well as the SmackDown recap and continuing to work on this WrestleMania project. But until next time, this has been The Push with Nick and KP. We'll see you soon. Take care.